Habarim. Hello, friends. We'll do it with the microphone on now. Juggling so many things these days. Trying to keep it all straight is a challenge. So what is up with the weather this week? Nothing? No, I heard this week that the weather went from 90 to 55 like it saw a cop in the median. Come on, that's funny. All right, yeah. It's not original to me, but no, it's been a weird week. The weather has changed. Obviously, as Curtis mentioned, it is now officially autumn. It is fall, and everywhere you look, everywhere you smell, everywhere you taste, pumpkin spice is in the air. You can't avoid it as much as you want to. No, actually, the leaves are changing. Times are changing. We're going to set the clocks back here in a few weeks because we like it when it's dark at 5 p.m. All right, to each their own. Football is back. Things are changing, yeah. And my Cleveland Browns play Rogers Bears today, and I'm kind of torn actually because Justin Fields is an Ohio State alumni, so it makes it a little bit of a challenge for me. But there's so much going on now, so much is changing. And for some of us, that's unsettling. I'm probably not the only one here that likes routine. I like rituals. I like things that are predictable. I know what to expect. I like to know what to expect when I wake up in the morning. I set my alarm clock to the same time every day, and I get up and do the same thing. I have my routines, and I like it that way. Am I alone here? No, okay. And if anything, the last year and a half has made more change, it brought more change into our lives. And I know for a fact that Mennonites don't like change. I mean, think about it like this. We are so resistant to change. Mennonites kept the old German language in worship up until like 50, 60, 70 years ago. It was still common to walk into a Mennonite church and hear the German language spoken. Our siblings in the faith still drive horse and buggies. You think we're not resistant to change? We're notorious for being resistant to change. In fact, do you know how many Mennonites it takes to change a light bulb? Change? What's that? Do you know how many Mennonites it takes to change a light bulb? Why would anybody want to change? Do you know how many Mennonites it takes to change a light bulb? Just one, and 7 to complain about how much they like the old light bulb better. The old one's burnt out, but we still like it better than the new one because the new one's new. I resist change. I know that many of you resist change, but change is upon us. And it has been expedited. It is brought about more quickly by the pandemic. But today I want to show you why we need not fear change. Because we're not going through it alone. In fact, we serve a God of new beginnings. So we're going to talk about how God has led God's people through change in the past. And we're going to talk about how God may be calling us to do some things differently today as well. So if you're not worried about that, or even if you are, please join me as we consider just who our God is. Now, around the first of this century, the turn of the century, again, another change, into the 21st century, there was a scholar of religion named Phyllis Tickle. And, it's tickle like, whoo, like that. Phyllis Tickle was a scholar of religion, and she wrote about this observation that she had that every 500 years, there's a major change in the church. And she referred to this major change as the 500-year rummage sale. So every 500 years, the church looks through their inventory and considers all that they have, and then asks the question, what can be gotten rid of? What can we jettison? What can we sell off? And what do we really need to keep? By getting rid of some things, we make some space for new things. By getting rid of some things, we make space for new growth. So it's not bad, as much as I resist change, to realize that change can lead to good things. So here's a few things that Phyllis Tickle observed in her 500-year rummage sale analogy. First thing we note is that around the year 30, a guy named Jesus started his public ministry. You've heard of Jesus? All right, not a trick question. This is a guy you've heard of before. 30, he comes onto the scene. He starts preaching and teaching about the kingdom of God. These people start following him around. They establish something that we call the church. This was a big change for the church because there hadn't been a Christian church before that. So something new was beginning in the year 30. Jump ahead not quite 500 years, and we see another big event that takes place. And this is an event that happens kind of outside of the church, but definitely affects the church. Year 476, we see the fall of the Roman Empire. And since the early part of the 4th century, with the conversion of Constantine, we see that the church has this major role in society. It's a major power player. But then Rome is overthrown, Rome falls, and all at once the church moves to preservation mode. It goes from being a dominant force to kind of preserving itself to make sure it doesn't fall apart. This is when we see things established like monasteries and abbeys. This is when we see clergy turn into like these monks and these nuns, these professional Christians. So it's a big change from this dominant society, this dominant aspect of society, to just preserving itself. Jump ahead another 500 years. We have the Great Schism. And schism's kind of hard to say, I know. I had to practice it. The Great Schism is the East-West Schism. The East, now we know them as the Eastern Orthodox Church. In the West, we know as the Holy Roman Catholic Church. A big division over who would be their leader, who would be their pope, how would they govern themselves? Would each congregation have autonomy, or did they have to report to Rome or to the pope? This isn't new, like this church division. It's gone all the way back to the year 1054 with the Great Schism. Then we jump another 500 years. Anybody know what happens in the 16th century? Oh yeah, the Protestant Reformation. On October 31st, that's Halloween for us, on 1517, Martin Luther nails his 95 Theses to the door of the church in Wittenberg. And it's kind of this moment where we recognize the beginning of the Protestant Reformation. It didn't all happen at that event, but it's kind of the major shift in the Protestant Reformation. And one of the major events that helped contribute to that was the invention of the printing press. You see, with the invention of printing press, before that, how did you like copy something down? If somebody said something really good and you wanted to share it, you had to hand write everything. Does anybody handwrite anything today? My hand cramps up just by writing my name, when I have to sign that electronic pad at the grocery store. So I don't handwrite anything, but you had to copy these things word for word if you wanted to send them on. The printing press allowed things to be mass-produced. So Luther could write his 95 Theses, they could mass-produce it, and you could go down the street, and you can give one to Marlene, and you can give one to Paxton, you can give one to Ruth, you can pass them out, and this is how this information was disseminated. Jump another 500 years, and you don't have to be really good at math to know if you add 500 to 1500, you come to the 21st century. So what Phyllis Tickle was realizing was happening in the early parts of the 21st century, she didn't predict a pandemic. What she saw happening was the rise of the internet. You remember the early 2000s, you click on that icon and you hear that dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee as your old modem dialed up AOL. And you could start at speeds of a landline. You could connect with these people around the world. Literally, with the click of a mouse, you could be sending an email to a person in California or Kathmandu. It's what I really, really want to do, is get in contact with these people in Kathmandu. That's a song, I think. You can be in contact with people around the world, and now you could share information with people you've never met before. And how did this affect the church? Well, now these ideas that people were having, they didn't have to be handwritten and mailed across the world. They didn't have to be printed on a printing press and handed out. You could send it out to literally everyone that had access to the internet instantly. And this only developed quicker and quicker as the internet developed. Now we have these high-speed connections, And now we can watch a sermon that was preached around the world instantly. We have podcasts and we have vlogs. Is that a thing now anymore? These video blogs and message boards where people communicate back and forth. So what Phyllis Tickle saw early in the 2000s was this rise of the internet, and she said this is going to affect the way we do church. Things are about to change, and it fits this pattern of every 500 years, a major change coming to the church. And I believe that the pandemic has only sped things along. The pandemic has expedited this change. Some of us were forced into adopting some of these new technologies, and change is upon us. And I've said I'm scared of change. I really like comfort of waking up every morning and making my coffee and reading the news and doing things the same way as I always have done them. And the pandemic and the rise of the internet and all these things will change the way we do things. It has changed the way we do things. And I realize that it probably affects every aspect of your life. The way you parent, the way you work, the way you interact with one another. But I think we see it the most, and I don't mean to make a competition about this, but I think we probably see it the most in our volunteer kind of organizations, where you don't have to be a part of that group. I think we see it all the more in places like the church. And I think the reason that this scares me so much is because I'm trained to do one thing. And you're looking at it. I went to college to be a pastor, and if things are changing, if times are changing, this is an opportunity for me to just have this sky-high level of anxiety. Because this is all I know. I've never had a real job, people. This is all I know how to do. And it's reason to fear. It's reason to be scared. But you know what else? There's also reason to have hope. There's also reason to be excited. And do you know why I'm excited? Well, let me tell you why I'm excited. It's scary but exciting because we serve a God of new beginnings. Okay, so this is one of those times where it would be really cool if you could be a little more charismatic. I'm going to say that again. I'm going to say it with drama. And if anybody wants to say amen, a woohoo, or I even once got a preach it brother at a church. And that powered me for like 10 years. I just kept living off that. Like back in 2004, I got a preach it brother. So I'm going to say this like with a lot of drama. And if you feel so led, give me a little feedback, all right? All right, so I have reason to be scared. You know, this is my entire life. I've built my career upon the church, and I don't know how to do anything but be a leader in the church. I have reason to be scared, but I have reason to be excited as well. Do you know why I have reason to be excited? Why? Because we serve a God of new beginnings. I was going to say it's not the same when you have to ask for it, but it is. It's nice. We serve a God of new beginnings. Go back early on in the Bible. Even in Genesis chapter 12, we're seeing a God of new beginnings. God calls out to Abram, who we later know becomes Abraham. God calls Abram, and he says, Abram, I'm going to send you to a place, and you're going to start all over again. You don't get to bring all your stuff. You've got power, you've got money, you've got family back here. You don't get to bring all that with you. You're going to go someplace. You know where you're going to go? I'll show you. He doesn't even tell Abram where he's going to go. Here it is. Genesis chapter 12, verse 1. The Lord had said to Abram, go from your country, your people, your father's household, to the land I will show you. Like God doesn't even say, go over here to this part of the country. God doesn't say, go move on, East Beverly and plant a church there or something like that. No. Just follow me. Just be confident. Have faith. Go. I'll show you where I'm going to lead you. And the thing that amazes me is Abraham does it. We serve a God of new beginnings. We serve a God of new beginnings. Think about when the Israelites, the descendants of Moses, or of Abraham, the descendants of Abraham are enslaved in Egypt. And they cry out to God, and God decides to work through this person of Moses to bring the people out of captivity, out of slavery. God parts the waters of the Red Sea, and they go to the very gates of the promised land. God has this new beginning in mind for them. The only reason they can't enter the promised land is because they're afraid of the people that are in there already. But God has this plan for them because God is a God of new beginnings. And it's not just these events in the past either. Read forward in the Bible. Go all the way to the book of Revelation. God has other new beginnings in mind as well. We go to Revelation chapter 21, verse 5. And this is God speaking to John the Revelator. God says, it says in the text, says, and he that sat upon the throne said, behold, I make all things new. Now I think it's important to note that God does not say here, behold, I make all new things. There's a difference between God making new things and God making all things new. That means that body of yours that's aching right now because you slept wrong. Like, how did I hurt my back? Oh, I slept. I don't, like, what'd you do? Oh, I slept wrong. How are you supposed to sleep? I slept wrong. That's why my back hurts. That back that hurts this morning will be made new. You know that relationship that's been broken for years and years from your childhood, you trace it back. Relationships that you have broken, God will make those things new. So we come almost to our scripture for today. Let's jump ahead to Isaiah. And I realized as I was working on this that con's kind of funny, actually, because in verse 1, God says these three words. God says, do not fear. And it's actually one of the most common phrases that we read throughout the Bible, do not fear. In other places, it makes really good sense. Think about it like this. Who else says do not fear? The angels, absolutely. If an angel showed up in my bedroom as I'm sitting there alone, whatever like Mary might be doing at the time, say she's knitting. I don't know if she would have knitted. But Mary's there doing her knitting and she sits alone in her bedroom, and an angel shows up and he's glowing. Maybe he has a halo and wings. I don't know. If anybody just shows up, what's their natural reaction? Get out. Well, you're afraid, right? Somebody's here. You weren't here before. Where did you come from? How did you get in here? Fear is a natural response in that situation. But for the Israelites, what's going on here is just that God's speaking through Isaiah, and God's saying, hey, you're going to get to go home. Don't be afraid. Why would they be afraid? Well, I know why they'd be afraid. Because new things are always scary. Yeah, new things. Even if they're... Never second guess the pastor. No, you're right, not always, but quite often, new things are scary. Even if we know that it's a good thing, it can be scary. Now, we have had no shortage of new things in the last year and a half. How many of you before March of 2020, don't raise your hand, you can if you'd like, how many of you before March of 2020 had never heard of Zoom before? Now raise your hand. How many of you are sick of Zoom? Zoom fatigue is a real thing. Like, I'm tired of Zoom. It's handy sometimes, I'll give you that. But I get tired of having these meetings online. At least sometimes you can be playing on Facebook while you're supposed to be in the meeting or something. I don't know. I didn't say that. I get tired of some of these new things, but Zoom is new to me. I heard about Zoom dating recently. I've heard of online dating where people meet people online. That's one thing. But now people are having these dates where the first time you actually meet with somebody, it's your picture right next to theirs on a computer screen, and you might eat together or something like that. You have to adapt. These things are new. How many of us had ever tried to educate our children using nothing but a screen? Especially for the teachers out there, how many of you have ever taught by Zoom before this year? Right, it's zero. And I see Tate back there. When was the last time? And Dwayne, you guys probably have had court appearances where you attend as a member of Zoom or whatever, however you might phrase that. These are all new things. We have no shortage of new things right now. I think about the way the church has had to adapt over the last year and a half. And I think about my seminary training, and I was trained to do things like counseling. I was trained to do biblical interpretation and theology, and even learned how to preach in seminary. They never taught me how to do live streaming. I think I figured it out this week. They never taught me how to edit video or upload things to YouTube. This is all new to me. And I realize that moving forward here, especially as the pandemic has sped things up, that we're going to have to continue to learn and make adaptations and changes along the way. And I realize that this is scary for most of us because we don't know what to expect. But I thought this week, and I'm not usually an optimistic person. I'm not necessarily pessimistic either, but I'm not just like a real, like, oh shucks, everything's going to be wonderful. But what if the pain and what if the anxiety that we're experiencing now is simply the birth pangs of something better that's yet to come? God can use bad things for good purposes. God can make good things come out of bad things. I don't think God caused the pandemic, just like I don't think God caused the Israelites to go into slavery or captivity. But God used those things for new beginnings, for good things to come out of them. So I know that you are all out there, you're thinking of things that you have to do differently in the coming months, and surely that brings anxiety, and surely you want to talk about those things. And if you want to have a conversation with me about whether your job is going to change, or your parenting, or your grandparenting, your relationships, if you want to have those conversations, please let me know, and we can sit down and we can have a Zoom meeting about it. I might even meet you in person. We can do that. But for the rest of our time together this morning, I want to talk about the church. This is something that we all have in common. How will the church change? So this week I sat down and I made just a real quick list of some of the things that have changed in the last year and a half. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. I'm not going to read through it. You'll probably read it while I'm talking here. That's fine. I thought of these things that have changed. And the things that we do in the church, believe it or not, there's a reason for why we do them. It's not just because I want to do it that way, or because we've always done it that way, or because I like it that way. There usually is a theological purpose for why we do the things we do. The challenge is that sometimes we forget why we do the things we do. Sometimes I forget the reason I walk into a room. We forget these reasons of why we do the things that we do, but there is a reason behind them. And COVID has caused us to slow down and reassess these things and ask, why have we done this way? And do we still need to? Or should we continue to do it this way? These are a few of the things that we have changed. And I've now been the pastor at Stanton Mennonite Church for 15 years. I know, I'm that old. 15 years been doing this. And for 15 years, I've come on a Sunday morning and we've handed out bulletins. And our ushers, you're going to come up a few times here, Roger. So just be prepared. So for 15 years, we've been handing out bulletins, and bulletins are helpful. Like, they tell us the order of service, they tell you what to expect and what song's going to come up next, so you can turn to that in advance whenever we were singing songs. They have the announcements. They have prayer requests. You can take that with you back home. They have our call to worship on the back. You can use that as well. But when the COVID hit, we stopped printing bulletins. Because we don't want to pass things around. Especially early on, the idea was that COVID may live on these bulletins. If we're passing them from person to person, that's a good way to spread this germ. So we cut out bulletins altogether. And now we as a church are starting to ask the question, should we bring them back? Well, we started thinking about this a little bit, and I realized that every week I make 70 copies of the bulletin. That was my practice. Before COVID, I made 70 copies of the bulletin. Do that for 52 weeks a year. Can anybody do that in their head? You don't have to. I did it already. 70 bulletins, 52 weeks a year. That comes out to 3,640 pieces of paper a year. All right, now think about it. We're going to get there. 3,640 pieces of paper a year for 15 years comes to 54,600 pieces of paper. Anybody know how many feet are in a mile? 5,280 feet. That's 10 miles. Right there. I should have given this information. A sheet of paper right here is 8.5 by 11 inches. That's just short of a foot. Laid end to end, 54,600 sheets of paper comes to be just short of 10 miles. No, just over 10 miles. That's a lot of trees. Now here's the thing. I think there's a place for bulletins. I think the bulletins are helpful. I went through that earlier for you. And I think that it's really great. I got some affirmation. This week I sent out the order of service with the Friday email. And I got 2 different people affirm that that happened. So maybe that's something we do moving forward. Maybe we print a few bulletins. And we send it out in advance for other people as well. So if you want to, you can print it out yourself. Or if you have a smart device, you can be flipping through that on your phone during the device. And the pastor won't know that you're checking your Facebook status. Just something that we have to think about differently moving forward. We've used over 10 miles of paper, I said, since I've been here as pastor. Here's that list again. What about the passing of the offering plates? Same thing. Whenever we started meeting again, we decided not to pass offering plates because, germs, I guess, could theoretically live on something like this. So if we start passing them back and forth, we decided we better not do that just to limit contamination from one person to the next. But now as we learn things like maybe COVID doesn't spread through physical contact in the same way we thought it might. Lysol between each person, right? Put on your mitts and pass it around. Well, we've had this box out there that we've been receiving offerings in for the last year and a half. And now we're questioning, do we really want to go back to this? Well, there's more reasons not to pass a plate than just to not spread germs. We realized recently that a large number of our congregation now gives electronically. You can log on to our website. You don't have to log on. You click on our website, and you can donate through that. Many people give directly from their church. And it avoids this awkward experience. And again, we much appreciate all the work that the ushers have done. But the ushers, when they come through on a Sunday morning, they would come to people and, you go like this. Well, what if that person, they're like, what? Hey, wait, I gave online, it's okay. I'm just not free riding or anything like that. Or what if there's a visitor, you haven't seen them for a while, or you've never been to the church? Do you feel like you're compelled to give in that situation? So by not passing the plates, by simply having a box at the front of the church, or allowing people to give online, we avoid some of those awkward situations where people feel like they must give. I never want people to feel like you must give. If you want to give, please do and support the work of the church. But this is a church. It's a free church. If you wish to give, please give. So we may not go back to passing the plates, but someone's pushed back on that and said the offering is actually a time for theological formation in our children. Because as we pass those plates around, those little eyes are watching everything you do. I see you, Casey. Everything you do. They see it, including the good things. So they may ask, Mom, Dad, why do you give money to the church? How much do you give to the church? How do you work that into your budget? Those are good teaching opportunities. So we have some challenges to work through as a church. What are we going to do as we move forward? And one thing that I really miss is having the penny power right up here. My coins count. Because this was a time that, especially the little kids, were participating. They would gather the change from the congregation and they would bring it forward and they would drop it here in this offering. And to some of those kids, that's a lot of money. A couple quarters is a big deal. That's like 3 bubblegum sticks and a dolly clothes. I don't know what you can buy for a quarter. But anyways, the point is, becomes a practice for the kids to be generous. And I want my children to grow up with this sense of this balance between frugality and generosity. And that was a chance for them to give to the church, to give towards other people. It was beautiful the way they would drop their money here and line up in the front of the church for children's time. And there's theology behind the children's time as well. This is a matter of saying to the kids, you are important. Because I realize that not all these kids are going to stay focused as the pastor rambles on for 30 minutes. I have a hard time keeping a lot of your adult attentions. I realize that. I'm not calling anybody out, but some of you feel like I am. By sitting the kids down here and having a short and condensed, kind of take it down a few steps sermon for them, I'm saying you're important to this church as well. You matter. It's not just about the older adults who can contribute financially or anything like that. No. Each person matters to this church. So I'm not going to take time to go through this entire list right now. But what I'm going to do is over the next few weeks is we're going to take some time to consider the essentials of the church. As we move forward, and we are moving forward. Thank you. You sensed that one coming on. We are moving forward. What is essential to the church? And what can we get rid of? What should we cut? What should participate in that rummage sale on this 500-year anniversary? I didn't catch that, but that's okay. What should be thrown out? What must we keep? We'll be looking at a number of these things over the coming weeks because times are changing. Change is inevitable. Now, nobody likes change, or most people don't like change, especially when it affects something so important to you as your job, as the church, as your faith. Some of us absolutely fear change. But every 500 years, a major event comes through and makes us rethink how we do things. Maybe that major event was the rise of the internet. Maybe it's this pandemic. In all likelihood, I think these two things come together to speed things up a little bit more. Change is here, and yes, we may be afraid, but we serve a God who not only commands us to have no fear, but a God who promises us that he will be with us each step of the way, because we serve a God of new beginnings. Please join me in prayer. God, we do give you thanks today for being with us, guiding us.